Good morning to all of you, all students. Today, I am going to discuss with you further about the transcription process in eukaryotes. Now, today I will try to discuss about the phosphorylation state of the tail of the RNA polymerase, as well as the different type of processing that occurs during the eukaryotic transcription process. Um, the splicing process will be discussed separately. It is also a part of your post-transcriptional modification process. Okay, but the other tools like the cap formation at the 5' end and at the and tail formation, um, addition of polyadenylate residues at the 3' end will be discussed. Okay, so let's get started now. So here, what does it says? It says a new set of factors stimulate the polymerase to elongation and RNA processing. Sorry, RNA proofreading. So, eukaryotes have multiple transcription factors. There are transcription factors for initiation of the transcription process, like your TBP, TF2D, TF2A, TF2B, TF2F, TF2E, and TF2H. But for the elongation also, there are a set of new transcription factors called as elongation factors, which stimulate the RNA polymerase 2 to, to catalyze the elongation process, and also the proofreading. That means it will check the incoming nucleotides that are forming RNA, that are complementary correctly pairing with the parental DNA strand here, and it also see the mistakes if any mistakes is occurring, and also phosphorylation of the tail occurs at certain regions which recruits various enzymes needed for RNA processing, which are needed for RNA processing, like the 5' cap formation, then the whole splicing process where the introns are going to be removed out and the exons are to be joined, and number 3 is your polyadenylation. Now polyadenylation is addition of adenylate residues, adenine residues at the 3' end. Okay, obviously this is done by some group of enzymes. All this whole process, different enzymes are involved for this processing, and at the same time RNA is also going to be elongated by using one of the DNA strands as a template. So what does it says? Let us see. Once polymerase has initiated the transcription, it shifts into the elongation phase, right? So once the RNA polymerase 2 here, RNA polymerase 2 have initiated the transcription, then that enzyme enters into the elongation phase. Now to for this transition, that means from initiation to elongation phase, it involves the polymerase 2 enzyme shedding most of the initiation factors. So during the process when the RNA polymerase is shifting from initiation phase to elongation phase of transcription, at that time it involves to shed off most of the initiation factors during transcription, like the general transcription factors has to be removed of most of it. Even the mediator which regulates the kinase activity of the tail has to be removed off. Now in that place, which transcription factor will come? In the place of initiation factor, elongation factor will come, obviously. So in that place, another set of factors are recruited for elongation. So the initiation factor like TF2A, TF2B, TBP, then TF2D, TF2A, TF2F, and TF2H, these are the all initiation factors for transcription. So it is saying that when RNA polymerase is shifting from initiation phase to elongation phase, now it has to elongate the RNA, carries out the transcription process. At the same time, it is also causing post transcriptional modification. That means the RNA which is going to be synthesized, it has to be modified. It has to be modified by a set of enzymes. So during elongation, most of the initiation factors has to be removed out because their work is now over. So some elongation factors come into place in place of initiation factors, and those elongation factors are TF2S and HSPT5. So TF2S and HSPT5 are your elongation factors. That is the factors which stimulate the elongation. Well, these are also proteins which helps the RNA polymerase 2 for the elongation of transcription process to occur. Now, other than this TF2S and HSPT5, other proteins and enzymes are required during elongation for RNA processing. So, the two main important elongation factors which are needed for transcription elongation is your TF2S and your HSPT5. Okay. Other elongation factors are also required, but they are involved for only RNA processing. That means after the formation of RNA, we have to modify the RNA, we have to make the RNA stable, and also for the future process of translation to be occurred, so that our ribosome can able to identify that RNA. Okay, so for that we have to process the RNA, also called as post transcriptional modification, like the 5 prime cap formation, then polyadenylation, whatever I have said little bit ago. So the enzymes involved in these processes, so the enzymes which are needed for elongation process, or the enzymes, the proteins or enzymes which are needed for RNA processing are like several of the initiation factors we have discussed. Now these proteins and enzymes are recruited to the C terminal tail of the large subunit of RNA polymerase 2. Well, I have not said that RNA polymerase 2 is made up of two subunits, large subunit and small subunit. The large subunit have the tail, the carboxy terminal tail. Okay, well, proteins have two ends, amino terminal end and carboxy terminal end. So at the carboxy terminal end of the RNA polymerase 2, there is a tail, and this tail is phosphorylated at different places, and depending on at what region the tail is going to be phosphorylated, it recruits the factors, it recruits the enzymes which are involved for the RNA processing. Okay, and it also recruits the factors which are needed for elongation process to occur. So again I'm repeating, if you are not able to understand this part, so TF2S and HSPT5 are what? These are the elongation factors. Now these factors will work after removal of the initiation factors during transcription. Even the mediators are also removed out during elongation. Then other enzymes are also needed, which are needed for RNA processing. I will name that enzymes, what they do, I will also say. Now these enzymes are all recruited, the enzymes are all recruited to the C-terminal tail of large subunit of RNA polymerase 2. So RNA polymerase 2, they have a C-terminal tail which is phosphorylated, and depending on the state of its phosphorylation, it recruits that enzymes needed for RNA processing, needed for the elongation factors to elongate the transcription process. So let us see the figure. If you look at the figure, you can able to understand clearly. Okay, so this is the figure. At three conditions it has been shown. At three conditions it has been shown. So you can see the first condition, RNA polymerase 2 has been phosphorylated at two regions, but at what particular regions it has not been said. So this figure shows various enzymes which are needed for RNA processing, and that enzymes are the capping enzyme, then the component of the splicing machinery, this blue one, then polyadenylation factors which are needed for polyadenylation, addition of adenine residues at the 3' end of the RNA polymerase, sorry, at the 3' end of the RNA. So these all enzymes are modifying enzymes which are involved in RNA processing, and these enzymes are recruited depending on what level of phosphorylation occurs on the tail of the RNA polymerase 2. So different enzymes are recruited during transcription depending on the phosphorylation state of the tail of RNA polymerase 2. Those enzymes, after recruitment, the enzymes are then transferred to the RNA. Then they will be transferred to the RNA. Like here you can see the capping enzyme has been recruited depending upon at where phosphorylation occurs on the tail of RNA polymerase 2. It recruits this RNA polymerase capping enzymes, and these capping enzymes, it will then go to its destination by formation of cap at the 5' end of the RNA. So here the green one is your RNA. Here the green one is your RNA which has been showing here, and 5' cap formation has been done on this 5' region of the RNA. So first, recruitment of the enzymes by the tail of RNA polymerase 2, then those enzymes are transferred to the RNA as they are needed. Okay, now in the bottom figure, if you see this figure, it shows that repeated heptapeptide sequence of the tail. Well, these are the one letter word of amino acids. Y represents the tyrosine, serine, P for tyrosine, serine, proline, threonine, serine, proline, serine. So this amino acid sequence is repeated many times within the tail of RNA polymerase 2. In humans, 52 times it has been repeated in the tail of their RNA polymerase 2. So the bottom figure that you can see here, the B number figure, it illustrates a schematic of the tail and has the sequence of one copy of that heptapeptide repeated sequence. So this repeated heptapeptide or 7 peptide sequence has been shown here. Now they are saying that at which position of their phosphorylation causes what enzymes to recruit. So it is saying that the position of serine residues that gets phosphorylated are indicated. So in this figure only the serine residues has been shown, only the serine residues has been shown which has been phosphorylated. And what happened if the serine residues of this repeated heptapeptide sequence of the tail of RNA polymerase II is phosphorylated? It is saying that if phosphorylation of serine occurs at position number 5, then it is associated with the recruitment of capping factors. Again, I repeat, if phosphorylation occurs on the fifth position that contains serine amino acid within the tail of RNA polymerase II, it will recruit, the RNA polymerase II will recruit these capping enzymes to come and bind, and then it will be further goes to its destination site, that is on the 5 prime end of RNA polymerase 5 prime end of the RNA for capping process to occur. So phosphorylation of serine at position number 5 of the tail is associated with recruitment of the capping factors which will cause 5 prime cap formation on the 5 prime end of the mRNA which is being formed during transcription. Whereas if phosphorylation of serine occurs at position number 2, if phosphorylation of serine occurs at position number 2, then it is associated with the recruitment of splicing factors. Well, splicing factors, as you know, I am saying, I have said an overview. Splicing factors are needed for the splicing process. And what does splicing process means? It simply means we have to remove all that non-coding regions of the mRNA, and we have to join the coding regions of the mRNA to make a mature mRNA. The non-coding regions of the mRNA are called as introns, whereas the coding regions of the mRNA are called as exons. So the introns has to be removed out from the mRNA and the exons has to be joined to form a functional mRNA. That process is called splicing. And for splicing process to occur, to remove away the introns and to join the exons, we need splicing factors, also called as spliceosome complex. These spliceosome complex or the components of the splicing machinery are recruited to the RNA polymerase when phosphorylation of serine occurs at position number 2 of the tail of RNA polymerase II. I hope you have understood what I have said here. So just two cases has been mentioned, that when phosphorylation of the tail occurs, particularly if phosphorylation occurs at the fifth position of serine, then it will recruit the capping machinery to carries out the 5 prime cap formation of the mRNA. If phosphorylation of the tail occurs at position number 2 that contains serine, then it will recruit the splicing machinery to come, and the splicing machinery will carries out their splicing process of the mRNA. Well, the mRNA is also going to be elongated further, and on the other hand, this splicing machinery is carry out their function simultaneously. So I hope you have understood what I have said. Well, they have not said about the polyadenylation, that when polyadenylation is done, well, there is some signal called polyadenylate signal. That sequence will be identified by the RNA polymerase 2, and it is also called as poly A signal. Okay, not polyadenylate signal, it is called as poly A signal. Poly A signal consists of a sequence actually, which is identified by the RNA polymerase 2, and then after identification of this poly A signal, it recruits these factors. It recruits this polyadenylation factor. It has name CSTF, CBT5. I think this type of names are given. You will see them later on when I will discuss this lecture further. And it carries out the polyadenylation. So you can see that how phosphorylation of the tail recruits these enzymes, the RNA processing enzymes, and also it has not been said. It has not been said all about that. It also recruits the elongation factors as well. The tail also recruits the elongation factor, that is your TF2S, and HSPT5 is also recruited to the tail depending on the level of its phosphorylation. Okay. Now I have said that one. Now from here you have to study in the next page. It is saying that various proteins are thought to stimulate the elongation by RNA polymerase 2. So there are various type of proteins which are thought to stimulate the elongation process. And one of the protein is your kinase B TEFB. Well, another new name you get here. So in elongation process, we see TF2S and HSPT5. Okay, that's good. They are elongation factors, the TF2S and HSPT5. And we also see some RNA processing enzymes like your capping enzymes. We have not mentioned the name of the capping enzymes, you will see later on. And the splicing enzymes and the polyadenylation factors. But these are the other names also which are needed during elongation, like the kinase P TEFB. This kinase P TEFB is recruited to the polymerase by transcriptional activators. So the transcriptional activators, they recruit the kinase P TEFB. Well, you have seen the picture of activators, remember. These are the activators which initially bound with the RNA polymerase via the mediator complex. These activators are actually recruiting. These activators are recruiting these enzymes called kinase B TEFB. TEFB. Well, TEF means transcriptional elongation factors. Okay. So kinase P TFB is recruited to the polymerase by transcriptional activators. Once bound to polymerase 2, this kinase P TFB protein will phosphorylate the serine residue at position number 2 of the carboxy terminal domain repeats as described earlier. So simple case, the activators, see I'm marking, these activators are recruiting this kinase PTFB, and kinase PTFB bound to the polymerase 2. Then this kinase PTFB will phosphorylate the serine residue at position number 2 of the tail of the RNA polymerase. And you know what will happen if phosphorylation um, what happens if phosphorylation of the carboxy terminal domain or at position number 2 is phosphorylated. Well, in the figure it has been shown that the phosphorylation of the tail at position number 2 consists of serine, and if the serine at position number 2 is phosphorylated, it is associated with the recruitment of splicing factors. Okay, but at the same time, this phosphorylation is also correlate with elongation, because splicing process means what? As I have said, that if phosphorylation of the tail of RNA polymerase 2 is occur at position number 2, where serine residue, amino acid residue is present, then it will recruit the splicing factors, the splicing machineries to come. But at the same time, this event also correlate with the elongation process. That means on the one hand the splicing process will occur, and on the other hand your the RNA will be elongated as done by the elongation factors. So the elongation factors will be also recruiting here when phosphorylation of serine occurs at two position of the tail of RNA polymerase. In addition, PTEFB phosphorylate and thereby activate another protein called HSPT5. So, listen very carefully. So, on one hand, we see that kinase P TFB is recruited by the activators, right? And this kinase P TFB bound to the RNA polymerase 2. Then what it does, it phosphorylate the serine residue, the serine amino acid residue, which was located at the second position of the tail of RNA polymerase. Now what will happen if the carboxy terminal domain tail is phosphorylated at position number 2 by kinase PTFB? It is associated with the splicing factors. Okay. At the same time, the same kinase PTFB phosphorylates and activates another protein called HSPT5. On the other hand, the same kinase PTFB, is activating another protein called HSPT5. It is activating another protein called HSPT5, and HSPT5 is a elongation factor. Okay, again the same kinase PTFB is recruiting this elongation factor called TATSF1. Again you see the same kinase PTFB is recruiting this factor called TATSF1, TATSF1, which is another elongation factor recruited by kinase PTFB. So thus kinase PTFB stimulates the elongation factor, stimulates the elongation process in three separate ways. So the activators are recruiting the kinase P TEFB, sorry, kinase P TEFB. Kinase P TEFB is stimulating the elongation process in three different ways. First, it is phosphorylating. It is phosphorylating the tail, the carboxy terminal tail of RNA polymerase 2 at position 2, at position 2, that is this one. So at position number 2 there is serine, at position number 2 there is serine, and they phosphorylate these regions. The repeated heptapeptide sequence, their position number 2 is phosphorylated by kinase B TFB. So kinase B TFB phosphorylate these region. Okay, and then what happened after phosphorylation? We know that this phosphorylation of serine at position number 2 of the tail by kinase PTFB recruits the splicing factors to come and carries out the splicing process. On the other hand, the same kinase PTFB activates a protein called HSPT5, and HSPT5 is the elongation factor. Lastly, the same kinase PTFB is recruiting this protein called TAT-SF1, which is another elongation factor. Okay, so in three ways, kinase PTFB carries out the stimulation of elongation process. Okay, now another factor or another elongation factor that does not affect initiation but it stimulates the elongation is your TF2S. So there is another elongation factor which does not affect the initiation process but it itself binds, that is your TF2S. Now these TF2S factors stimulate the overall rate of elongation by limiting the length of the time of polymerase pause when it encounters a sequence that would otherwise tend to slow the enzyme progress. So normally this TF2S, what it does, this factor, again I'm saying this factor, okay, I'm changing the color of the pen. So this factor, that means this TF2S, this TF2S stimulates the overall rate of elongation. This TF2S stimulate the overall rate of transcription elongation. How? Stimulate means to speed up. And how it stimulates the overall rate of elongation? By limiting the length of the time of polymerase pause whenever it encounters any sequence that would otherwise tends to slow down the enzyme's progress. So what happened actually when RNA polymerase is elongating the transcription process? It it stalls. It sometimes it stalls to check that what nucleotide sequence is present in the DNA, and then it will allow complementary RNA strand to be formed from that DNA strand. So every time it encounters a sequence, it pauses, it sometimes pauses, it slows down the process. Okay, like for example, there is a adenine in the DNA, so in that place there will be uracil in case of RNA, because RNA contain uracil in place of thymine. Then it encounters after A there is T, so there will be A in the RNA. So when it is making that transcription process, when it is encountering the sequences, it slows down, and that it actually lengthifies the transcription process. Okay, it makes the progress of the enzyme low to be slowed down, and to stimulate this whole process we need TF2S tries to speed up the transcription process actually. S for stimulation. Okay, you always remember S for stimulation. So the TF2S get its name from the S, which means it stimulates. It stimulates the overall rate of elongation by limiting the length of the time polymerase pauses when it encounters a sequence that would otherwise tend to slow down the enzyme progress. Okay, so its function is to just stimulate the enzyme so that it can speed up the transcription process, and that is the reason also that why during transcription more errors occur. Okay, it is a feature of the polymerase that it does not transcribe through all the sequence at a constant rate. Rather, it pauses periodically, sometimes for rather long periods, before resuming transcription. In the presence of TF2S, the length of the time of polymerase pause at any given site is reduced. So simple thing it is saying what the function of TF2S, that if TF2S is present, the time taken for the polymerase to pause will be reduced, because what happened each time when polymerase encounters any sequence, it slows down. It slows down. It slows down its polymerase activity. It slows down the process of transcribing into RNA. Okay, so it is a feature of polymerase that it does not transcribe through all sequence at a constant rate. So it is not like that, that it is sometimes what happen, it speed up and it get again slow down due to the when it encounters some certain sequences in the DNA. When it is transcribing, it slows down. Now to stimulate that process, to stimulate its speed so that it can quickly carries out the transcription process, that's why we need TF2S, which actually causes the pausing of the RNA polymerase to reduce. Now TF2S stimulate the speed of the elongation, and it has also other function as well. It has also other function, like it contributes to the proofreading by polymerase, because RNA polymerase is pausing. Why? Because it tries to, it goes for the proofreading, that whether the incoming nucleotides is correctly matching with the template strand or not. Okay, so TF2S also catalyze this function. It contributes to the proofreading by the RNA polymerase. Okay, TF2S stimulates an inherent RNase activity in polymerase, allowing the alternate approach to remove the misincorporated bases through local limited RNA degradation. See, just see here, TF2S what it does? It causes proofreading, it contributes proofreading by polymerase. So it helps to check the incoming nucleotides which will be correctly matching with the complementary DNA strand. And at the same time, TF2S has a RNase activity. TF2S has a RNase activity which will help to remove the misincorporate nucleotide. So if some wrongly nucleotide has been placed in the RNA, TF2S will stimulate that it has a RNase activity which will remove that misincorporated RNA nucleotide by degradation of that particular region. Then again it will synthesize the correctly nucleotides. It contributes to the synthesis of correct nucleotides with RNA polymerase 2. So you can see that what functions done by TF2S. TF2S has many functions. The first function that we have seen in TF2S is it stimulates the elongation rate of elongation process by limiting the length of the time the RNA polymerase pauses when it encounters any sequence that would otherwise tends to slow down the enzyme process. It simply means RNA polymerase, what it does, it RNA polymerase cannot transcribe all the sequence at constant rate. RNA polymerase 2 in eukaryotes does not transcribe through all the sequence at constant speed. Rather, it has to pause periodically. Sometimes it pause for long period of time. I think for the polymerase activity maybe, or due to some specific sequence it get paused. So to reduce that time of pausing, to reduce that pausing time of polymerase, TF2S carries out the function. In the presence of TF2S, the length of the time of polymerase pauses will be reduced. At less time, the polymerase 2 will be paused and it will carries out the elongation, tries to carries out the elongation at constant rate by stimulating by the TF2S. Well, TF2S have also another function that I have said before, that it helps in proofreading activity by polymerase. Okay, and how it does? Because TF2S has a RNase activity. TF2S has a RNase activity. Okay, which actually not, it actually stimulates an RNase activity. Okay, in the polymerase, it stimulates an RNase activity within the polymerase, which will remove the misincorporated base. I'm sorry for that. I have what I have said. TF2S does not have RNase activity, but TF2S, what it does, it it stimulate, its function is to stimulate. It stimulate the RNase activity of RNA polymerase. TF2S stimulate the RNase activity found within the RNA polymerase 2. And this RNase activity will help to remove the misincorporated nucleotides, the misincorporated ribonucleotides, or you can say misincorporated bases in the RNA by degrading that site, by doing RNA degradation. Okay, so TF2S, just its function is to stimulate. That's why the name comes S for stimulation. It stimulate the, it reduce the time so that the RNA polymerase does not get paused for a long period of time during transcription elongation. At the same time, it also stimulate the proofreading activity by stimulating the RNase activity which is found within the polymerase 2, okay, by local limited RNA degradation. Okay, so I hope you have understood what I have said. Just go through the kinase PTEFB function. Here, most important has been given the function of kinase PTEFB, and your this one, this TF2S, this TF2S function. Their function is bit of importance. Okay. So this was about the elongation, but during elongation, RNA processing also occurs, that we know. So what happened during RNA processing? Let us see. So once transcription is occurring, eukaryotic RNA has to proceed in various ways before being exported from nucleus, where it will be translated. Well, translation occur on the cytosol. It occurs on the outer membrane of the rough endoplasmic reticulum, where ribosomes are there. Now, this is specific for the secretory proteins to be produced, which has to be secreted out from the cell. For that proteins, the mRNA has to go into the outer membrane, extracellular surface of the rough endoplasmic reticulum, where they will encounter with the ribosomes and carry out the translation process. And that protein product will be entered to the lumen of the endoplasmic reticulum, which will be further transported via vesicles through the Golgi apparatus, where they will be further post-translationally modified, like glycosylation, like with the help of different process they are modified to form a stable protein structure, and they are packaged out from the cell, which is a type of secretion process. Now, these are all secretory proteins, but the proteins which are needed for the cell itself, for them the ribosomes are actually located in the cytoplasm as well. So before that we have to export the mRNA from nucleus to the cytoplasm, and for this reason we have to process this mRNA, because we need to stabilize the RNA structure for some bit of time, uh, until translation occurs. Okay, because RNA is single stranded na, so it has to maintain its structure, otherwise it will be degraded by the nuclease enzyme found in the nucleus and other enzymes. Okay, well, RNA have a secondary structure by folding onto itself to form loop like structure, hairpin loop like structure. It can occur, but it is not so much stable if you compare with DNA structure. Okay, so once transcription is done, the eukaryotic RNA has to be processed. Now it's not like that the whole transcription process occur and then only RNA processing occur. Not like that. On one hand, your transcription elongation is occurring. Your RNA polymerase is catalyzing the synthesis of RNA. On the other hand, the tail of the RNA polymerase is recruiting. The tail of the RNA polymerase is recruiting the modifying enzymes needed for the RNA processing. As I have seen, we have seen in the picture before. Now these processing events are three types. Three processing events are occurring, which are has to be discussed. Capping of the 5' end of RNA, splicing. The name looks very simple, but it is very big. That's why a separate chapter has been given on splicing. And polyadenylation of the 3' end of the RNA. So normally, if you see, there are three events for the splicing process. One is at the 5' end, there will be a capping of the RNA. Second is splicing, where the introns are removed out and the exons, which are the coding regions of the RNA, has to be joined to form a functional mRNA. And polyadenylation of the 3' end of the RNA, where multiple adenyl residues will be added at the 3' end, done by some enzymes like poly A polymerase. And out of these three events, capping of RNA at the 5' end, splicing, polyadenylation at the 3' end, out of these three important process, the splicing process is more complicated. As it is written here, you can see the most complicated is splicing, the process where non-coding introns are removed from the RNA to generate a mature mRNA. So splicing is more complicated process, that's why it has not been mentioned here now today. It is given separately on chapter number 13. If you see, just go through the figure, you can able to understand that how splicing process occurs. Now the other two process has to be discussed now. Okay, let us see. Let us see that other two process. I'm not going through this. Okay. Well, it is saying here that HSPT5, which is an elongation factor, it is recruiting and stimulating the 5' capping enzyme. Well, we have also seen in the figure, that, okay, sorry for that. We have also seen in the figure, uh, that, okay, again, okay. So we have also seen in the figure that if phosphorylation of serine occur at position number 5, then it is associated with the recruitment of capping factors. So the 5 prime capping factors, the enzymes needed for 5 prime cap formation in the 5 prime end of the mRNA, is recruited by the phosphorylation state of the tail of RNA polymerase. If phosphorylation occurs at position number 5 of serine, so if phosphorylation occurs at position number 5 of serine, then this phosphorylation will of the tail will allows the RNA polymerase 2 enzyme to recruit the capping machinery, which will add cap to the 5 prime end of the mRNA. At the same time, it is also saying that HSPT5 also recruits and stimulate the 5 prime capping enzyme, right? Okay, HSPT5 recruits the 5 prime capping enzyme as well. So in two ways the 5 prime capping enzyme is recruited. Okay. In another case, for the splicing machinery, it is saying that SF1 recruits the components of the splicing machinery. Well, the components of the splicing machinery is depend on phosphorylation of serine at position number 2 of the tail of RNA polymerase also. So TAT SF1 recruits the components of the splicing machinery. At the same time, the recruitment of the splicing machinery is done by the phosphorylation of serine at position number 2 of the tail of RNA polymerase 2. So it seems that elongation, termination of transcription, and RNA processing are all interconnected, and they are coordinated in a coordinated manner. They move together. That's why that was the reason that why RNA polymerase pauses during elongation process, and to speed up so that the elongation, so that the pausing of the RNA polymerase would be reduced, TF2S come into play. It stimulate the proofreading activity of the RNA polymerase 2 by stimulating the RNA's activity. Then at the same time, it is also reducing the pausing time of the RNA polymerase 2, because the RNA polymerase 2 cannot quickly go through the elongation process when it encounters certain sequence, because it has to make RNA, correct RNA, and that RNA has to be undergoing through the splicing, through the modification process on the other hand immediately. So that's why very carefully the RNA polymerase 2 carries out the function, and for this it pauses, it slows down, and to speed up the process, the TF2S come into play. So these all things, the termination of transcription, the elongation of transcription, and RNA processing are all interconnected with each other. Okay. So let us go for the RNA processing. Well, the first is your 5 prime cap formation. If you see the 5 prime cap formation, you can see the picture. Okay, in the first step, this is your RNA. This is your 5 prime end of your RNA, and in the 5 prime end you can see three phosphate groups are present at the 5 prime end, at the extreme 5 prime end of the RNA. And the first enzyme which actually catalyze this step is your RNA triphosphatase. What does RNA triphosphatase do is your you will see them, what I will discuss now. Then later on you can see guanylyl transferase, which transfer a phosphate group, which actually catalyze a transesterification reaction here by allowing this guanine to be attached with the 5 prime end of the mRNA. And the last enzyme is your methyl transferase. As the name suggests, It add this enzyme catalyze the addition of methyl group at the seventh position of the guanine nucleotide. Okay, so this is your cap, the 7 methyl guanosine triphosphate cap, which is occurring at the 5 prime position of your RNA. So three enzymes are needed for your capping process: RNA triphosphatase, guanylyl transferase, and your methyl transferase. So let us see how it occurs, how it is done. Okay. So it almostly becomes 1 hour, but I will try to finish off the capping and the polyadenylation of the RNA. Okay, wait for a minute. So let's get started now. So the first RNA processing event is your capping, right? And this involves addition of a modified guanine base to the 5 prime end of the RNA. So what happens during capping? Your modified guanine is being added to the 5 prime end of the mRNA. As you have seen in the figure, a guanine, a GTP, a guanosine triphosphate, was being used here to add to the extreme 5 prime end of the RNA. But that guanine has to be modified. It has to be modified with the methyl group, which is being positioned at the 7th position of the guanine nucleotide or guanine base. Specifically, it is a methylated guanine, and it is joined to the RNA transcript by a unusual 5 prime 5 prime linkage involving three phosphates. So if you see it carefully, it is saying here that the guanine is modified guanine, which is binding to the 5 prime end of the RNA, and that modified guanine is actually methylated. That means methyl group has been attached to the guanine at position number 7. We have seen in the figure at position number 7 the methyl group has been attached with the guanine. And the most peculiar thing is that this guanine, this methylated guanine, joined with the RNA by unusual 5 prime 5 prime linkage. Normally one nucleotide joined with the other nucleotide by a 5 prime 3 prime linkage, which is a phosphodiester linkage. But here 5 prime linkage occurs, and it involves three phosphates here, if you see. Now this 5 prime cap formation is created by three enzymatic steps. Okay, three enzymatic steps, three enzymes are involved for the formation of this cap, 5 prime cap. What happened in the first step? Let us see. In the first step, a phosphate group is removed from the 5 prime end of the RNA. So in the first step, a phosphate group is removed from the 5 prime end of the RNA. Well, at the extreme 5 prime end of the RNA, there are three phosphate groups, can be called as alpha, beta, and gamma phosphate. And in this first step, one of the phosphate groups is removed from that 5 prime extreme end of the RNA. So it becomes unstable, right? Unstable. Now a GTP is added, a guanosine triphosphate is added, and in the final step, that nucleotide is modified by addition of a methyl group. Simple thing. So in the first step, what we do, we remove a phosphate group at the extreme 5 prime end of the RNA. The RNA become unstable. Then a GTP, a guanosine triphosphate molecule, is added at that extreme 5' end, and in the final step we modify that GTP molecule by addition of a methyl group at the 7th position of the guanine nucleotide. The cap formation of the RNA when it's still only some 20 to 40 nucleotides long. So during transcription, when the transcription has been occurred up to 20 to 40 ribonucleotides, then only the RNA polymerase 2 enzyme recruit the capping machinery to catalyze the RNA processing. Okay, after capping, dephosphorylation of ACR5 within the tail repeats leads to dissociation of the capping machinery and further phosphorylation, causing the recruitment of the machinery needed for the RNA splicing. So directly it has been said, so they have shifted to the different part. Actually they have not focusing on capping now, so I'm going to focus on the capping now. I'm going to focus on the capping now more precisely. So they are saying here what I have said just now, that at the serine position number 5, at the serine position number 5 of the tail of RNA polymerase 2, when it is phosphorylated, then the capping factors come na, and carries out the capping process at the extreme 5' end. But when that phosphorylation is, when that phosphate group is removed from the serine position number 5 of the tail, then no more capping process will occur. And then what happened, serine at position number 2 of the tail phosphorylation occurs, which leads to the assembly of the splicing machinery to come and carries out their splicing process. So just like a switch. And here it has not been mentioned in this book that what enzyme what it does. Okay, so let us see one by one. Okay, let us see one by one about the steps. Here it has been given in this figure, all about the enzymes what it does in this capping process. So let us see what it does, what it says. So the structure and the formation of 5' cap. In the first step, the gamma phosphate at the 5' end of the RNA is removed by an enzyme called RNA triphosphatase. Again I repeat, the in the first step, the gamma phosphate at the 5' end of the RNA is removed by an enzyme called RNA triphosphatase. So RNA triphosphatase, what it does, it removes the last phosphate at the extreme 5' end of the RNA. Well, this is the RNA and this is the extreme 5' end of the RNA. You can see at the extreme 5' end of the RNA there are three phosphate groups, can be called as alpha, beta and gamma phosphates. Now this gamma phosphate is removed. This gamma phosphate is removed. This is the gamma phosphate, this is the alpha phosphate and the beta phosphate has been written here. So the extreme gamma phosphate is removed, and that is removed by which enzyme? This enzyme, RNA triphosphatase, remove this last gamma phosphate. You can see here it has removed. The gamma phosphate is no more. It is no more. Okay, so this is the first step. What is the second step? In the next step, the enzyme guanylyl transferase catalyzes the nucleophilic attack of the resulting terminal beta phosphate on the alpha phosphoryl group of a molecule of GTP. Again, I repeat, in the next step, the enzyme called guanylyl transferase catalyzes the nucleophilic attack on resulting terminal beta phosphate on the alpha phosphoryl group of a molecule of GTP. So there is an enzyme called guanylyl transferase. Guanylyl transferase, it causes a nucleophilic attack between the GTP with the 5 prime extreme with the 5 prime beta phosphate group of the RNA. So GTP also have 3 phosphates. You can see here GTP, this is a GTP molecule, this is a GTP molecule. It has 3 phosphate alpha, beta, gamma, and this was the result of that extreme 5 prime end of the RNA where the gamma phosphate has been removed out. The gamma phosphate has been removed out. Now what happened? Guanylyl transferase causes a nucleophilic attack. The nucleophilic attack is occurring between this beta phosphate of the 5 prime end of the mRNA with the alpha phosphoryl group of that GTP molecule. Why nucleophilic attack is being occurring? So that this GTP molecule can come and bind at this extreme 5 prime end of the mRNA. Okay, so it will be binding here, it will be binding here, and for this binding this nucleophilic attack is important because otherwise it will not bind. So here we can see guanylyl transferase catalyzing the nucleophilic attack, and that nucleophilic attack is occurring between the beta phosphate found on the 5 prime extreme end of the RNA with the alpha phosphoryl group of a molecule of GTP, and this process is catalyzed by guanylyl transferase. So in the next step you can see that how this GTP molecule has attached with the extreme 5 prime end of the RNA and is attached through the help of 5 prime 5 prime linkage, which is an unusual linkage involving 3 phosphates. Well, 5 prime 3 prime linkage we have seen, that type of linkage is called phosphodiester linkage or phosphodiester uh, bond you can say. Okay, but here 5 prime 5 prime linkage occur which involves 3 phosphate groups, 2 phosphate, 1 phosphate from the GTP molecule that involves the alpha phosphate. This is the alpha phosphate of the GTP molecule, but the remaining two are the beta and the alpha phosphate is this is from that extreme 5 prime end of the RNA. So in the next step it is very important. The first step was only to remove this gamma phosphate catalyzed by this enzyme RNA triphosphatase. In the next step you can see that a nucleophilic attack is being occurred between a molecule of GTP with the extreme 5 prime end of the RNA, and more specifically if I say the nucleophilic attack is being occurring between the beta phosphate of the 5 prime end of the RNA with the alpha phosphoryl group of a molecule of GTP that causes the GTP molecule to bind with the extreme 5 prime end of the RNA, right? And the last step is very easy called methyl transferase. This enzyme actually catalyze the addition of a methyl group at the 7th position of the GTP molecule. So it is saying here the last step is your methyl transferase. Okay, okay. So so further modification of the GTP molecule occurring by addition of methyl group by methyl transferase. Now, this resulting 5 prime cap structure later recruits the ribosome to the mRNA for the translation process to begin. Now, why this cap formation is done actually? So that your ribosome can able to identify these regions, that yes, this is the place where I have to now bind from the 5 prime end and carries out my translation process with, obviously for translation also there need some initiation factors, okay, to bind. Okay, so this was about the cap formation. Okay, now for the tail formation, the polyadenylate tail formation is done by which enzymes? Well, if you see the figure, you can able to understood very clearly. uh, I don't think I have to say all of the things, but still if you want to say, I will. I say, okay, let us see. So what does it says? Let us see. It is saying that once RNA polymerase have reached to the end of the gene, it encounters a specific sequence that, after being transcribed into mRNA, it triggers the transfer of polyadenylation enzymes to that RNA, leading to these three events. That means RNA polymerase 2, when it is transcribing the end of the gene, it encounters certain specific sequences, and when it transcribe that sequences, when that sequences occur in that mRNA, that means during transcription it encounters that sequence, right, in the DNA, and it makes the RNA from that DNA. Now that region in the RNA, the complementary region where the DNA have that specific sequence, that region will be recruited by the polyadenylation enzymes, leading to three events. Three events will occur: cleavage, that means cutting of the mRNA; addition of many adenine residues to the to its 3 prime unit will be wrong, and subsequently termination of the transcription by poly A polymerase. So three events occur when your polyadenylation is done. First, a poly A signal sequence will be identified by the RNA polymerase. Poly A signal sequence will be identified by the RNA polymerase. Then, after identification of that poly A signal sequence, it transcribed that region with mRNA, and that mRNA, that region where the poly A signal sequence was being transcribed, it will be recruited by the polyadenylation enzymes to the mRNA. And then three events we will see. First is cleavage of the mRNA, that means the mRNA will be cut at certain region. Addition of many adenine residues to the 3 prime end, not at the 5 prime end, is written a little bit wrong. And subsequently termination of the transcription by the RNA polymerase. So how it occurs, let us see. So there are two protein complexes which are carrying the carboxy terminal domain of polymerase as it approaches to the end of the gene. So two important protein complexes which are involved in polyadenylation is your CPSF and CSTF. CPSF is cleavage and polyadenylation specificity factor, whereas CTSF is cleavage stimulation factor. Both CPSF and CSTF enzyme are actually needed for polyadenylation process to occur. Okay, so let us see this sequence CPSF and CSTF, which one transcribe into RNA, trigger transfer of this factor to the RNA called poly A signals and are shown in the figure. So if you see it clearly, you can able to imagine that this was the poly A signal sequence which was found in the DNA, but now this signal sequence has been transcribed by the RNA polymerase 2. It has been transcribed by the RNA polymerase 2 to make RNA, and this was that region of that poly A signal sequence of that of RNA. Now this poly A signal sequence causes a recruitment of these two proteins called CPSF and CSTF. Well, CPSF is cleavage and polyadenylation specificity factor, whereas CSTF is your cleavage stimulation factor. Now this sequence once transcribed into RNA, when this polyase signal sequence is transcribed into RNA, then it recruits these two enzymes. Otherwise, by looking at this sequence, by looking at this polyase signal sequence, CPSF or CSTF will not come and bind. It will only bind to the RNA when this region is transcribed. So when this polyase signal sequence is transcribed into RNA, then only your CPSF and CSTF will come and bind. Okay, and it will cause polyadenylation. Now, well, both of these CSTF and CPSF, they are needed for cleavage and polyadenylation, you will see. And the whole polyadenylation process is actually mediated by a enzyme called poly A polymerase. If you see it carefully, you can see that CPSF, CSTF, which cause stimulation, removes out, and CPSF carries out the main cleavage, main cutting of the enzyme. Okay, well, the main thing that is done during polyadenylation is your poly A polymerase. Poly A polymerase can add about 200 adenine residues to the RNA at the 3' end after the cleavage done by the CPSF and CSTF protein. Now these enzyme poly A polymerase, they need RNA, they need ATP as a precursor molecule and add nucleotides using the same process as done by the RNA polymerase. But the main specific feature of this poly A polymerase is that they don't need any primer. They don't need any template also. They only goes on adding adenine to the 3' end, right? So what I have said, after identification of the polyase signal sequence, transcription of this polyase signal sequence occur, which recruits this CSTF and CPSF to the mRNA. CPSF and CSTF carries out the RNA cleavage. It carries out the RNA cleavage. You can see RNA cleavage has been written. Okay, and then this CSTF goes out in that place. Now in that place, CPSF binds and recruits the poly A polymerase to come and bind. Poly A polymerase add multiple adenine residues to the 3' end of the RNA without using any template. So it don't use any template, but it needs ATP as a precursor molecule, because without that you cannot add adenine. So here a lot of ATP is being wasted, not say wasted, it is for being to safely protect the mRNA actually. So lot of ATP is being used, better to say. Okay, okay. So without template, using a template, it carries out the elongation process, and thus long tail of adenine found in the RNA but not in DNA. If you see, the adenine residues, approximately 200 adenine residues has been shown. Okay, now this green one are actually protection protein called poly A binding protein. These are the additional poly A binding protein which actually protects the end of the mRNA here. And these are the multiple adenine residues, as you can see here, written as A, which has been catalyzed by poly A polymerase without using any template. Okay, now normally this poly A tail sequence, the main significance of this poly A tail is two things. One is uh, for stability of the RNA polymerase, sorry, not RNA polymers, for stability of the mRNA. And second thing is, this region is important for the proteins that bind specifically to the poly A sequence during translation. So it is needed for the translation process also. It is needed for the translation process where the initiation factors will also interact with this tail region of the mRNA and carries out the initiation of the translation process. Okay, so this was about the whole idea of your polyadenylation and the capping machinery that I have said. I hope you have understood. Just go through this chapter, just go through these notes. Okay, the thing that I have said here, but not all of them. Okay, not go all of them. Okay, so in the next page, that is given on page 402 of the PDF, not the page number which is mentioned on the book. Okay, the PDF that is shown here is 402. So on the 402 page, you have to go up to here. Okay, not do not go the whole thing. If you can understood, you can study this whole thing. Okay, you can study this whole thing. Otherwise, this much is enough for you for your BSc examination. Okay, so up to sequence. Well, you can also study this part also, this paragraph also. This paragraph shows that it mentions that how the RNA polymerase terminates the transcription process. So let us try to discuss this much also, this much part. It is saying that how transcription is terminated by RNA polymerase. It is saying that RNA polymerase enzyme does not terminate immediately when RNA is cleaved and polyadenylated. Well, even after polyadenylation, RNA polymerase does not stop. It continues to transcribe mRNA. So rather, this RNA polymerase 2 continues to move on along the template, generating a second RNA molecule that can become as long as several hundred nucleotides before terminating. The polymerase then dissociates from the template, releasing the new RNA, which is then degraded without even leaving the nucleus. So it is saying that after the polyadenylation occurs, the enzyme still does not terminate the transcription process. It is still moving as long as several hundred nucleotides, and then the polymerase suddenly dissociate from the template. Obviously there must be something that causes that polymerase to dissociate from the template, and the RNA, the remaining RNA which was being produced just after polyadenylation, that RNA is of no use, so it will be never goes out from the nucleus, right? Now it is still not clear that what links polyadenylation to termination, but it is clear that polyadenylation signal is required for termination. We need a signal sequence for polyadenylation to occur, but by looking at the polyase signal sequence, okay, that's good, but it has not been mentioned that what links polyadenylation to termination, because even after polyadenylation, RNA polymerase is transcribing that RNA, which will not get be released into the nucleus, it will be degraded further. Okay, it is saying theoretically some scientists have proposed a model that why transcription termination occurs after polyadenylation. First is they are saying that transfer of a 3' processing enzyme from the polymerase carboxy terminal domain tail of the RNA causes a structural change in the polymerase that reduce the processivity of the enzyme, leading to spontaneous termination soon afterward. Some scientists have proposed a model that when the 3' processing enzymes, that is your polyadenylation enzymes, are recruited to the tail of the RNA polymerase, it causes a structural change in the structure of the RNA polymerase, which triggers the termination of the transcription. Well, the second model proposes that absence of a 5' cap for the second RNA molecule is sensed by the polymerase, which as a result recognizes the transcript as improper and immediately it terminates. So the second model shows that, well, after polyadenylation still the RNA polymerase is transcribing, but as there is no new 5' cap formation on the second RNA molecule, it is sensed by the polymerase that yes, no cap formation has been done by the polymerase, so it will recognize the transcript as an improper transcript, improper RNA formation, and soon after 100 base pair it will terminate. Well, don't think that a transcription occurred by only one RNA polymerase. Multiple RNA polymerase is causing the transcription of a single gene. Okay, just like multiple ribosomes are actually called as polyribosomes, or you can say polysomes, are causing the translation to form multiple proteins from that single gene. Similarly, multiple RNA polymerase is also doing the transcription process. So this was all about the transcription termination and all the other things that are required for the transcription termination to done, like the processing, okay, of the cap, the tail. Well, splicing process has not been mentioned because it is given separately on chapter, and based on your syllabus I will try to discuss them with you. Okay, that's all for today's lecture. Okay.